So, hi everyone, my name's Josh Redshaw. I'm Senior Account Manager at Transition Partners. Not too sure how much you know about Transition Partners. We're a recruitment agency based in Central Leeds. We have offices based in Berlin, so we're very much involved in the European markets also. We work across digital, IT, transformation, but most of all, welcome to all you guys joining for the Deploy Like a Boss event. We've got three great panelists who will be introducing themselves very, very shortly. The event's going to be very much a panel-based discussion. Each guy's got some really, really great points to be made upon deploy CICD pipelining, and then hopefully we'll have a bit of a Q&A at the end. By all means, feel free to drop any questions you've got into the chat bit. They'll try and get answered along the way, and if not, we'll definitely come back to them at the end of the event. So I'm going to pass you over to the guys to introduce themselves. We'll start with Tim Lewis. Tim, over to you.
Hi all, I'm Tim. I work at DAZN. If you've not heard of DAZN, we are an over-the-top live sports media company. So kind of like the Netflix for live sports. Excitingly, we're launching globally on the 1st of December. We're already established in a few countries, but you should be able to download DAZN in this country come a month's time, which should, yeah, it's exciting times for us. So I am the software engineering manager at DAZN in Leeds. In Leeds, we are building out the sort of operational tools and systems that help support the business do their business. That's me.
Thank you, Tim. Ian?
Hi, I'm Ian Watson. I'm a DevOps strategy consultant at BJSS. I come originally from an engineering background, but these days I'm helping other organizations move to a more CICD way of working.
And finally, Russell.
Hi everyone, I'm Russell Collingham, Head of Technology at Hedgehog Lab, based in Newcastle, although at home at the moment. And we're a digital consultancy. We have no products of our own. We build bespoke software solutions, mobile apps, web platforms, cloud platforms for various clients.
Thank you all, appreciate it. The event's going to be very much talking about how releases, how deployments, how CI/CD pipeline is very, very beneficial to these three organizations, what makes them successful. It's going to be looked at from a very much different point of view, from a purist to product to agency. And we're going to start with the purist point of view. So I'm going to hand you over to Ian Watson. Over to you.
The purist. Can't say that's been used to describe me often. I think poacher turned gamekeeper a bit in places. So certainly I wasn't following some of the best practices back when I was a developer 10 years or so ago. I would now. Okay, CI/CD. So I guess the first thing I want to do is define what the heck that means. So I think along with the term DevOps, CI and CD are probably the most abused terms in tech at the moment, possibly along with SRE. So start with CD. Now, first of all, we have to decide whether we mean CD or CD. So continuous delivery and continuous deployment are two different things. Continuous delivery means we're developing in small batches, ensuring our software can be releasable at any time. Okay, so as soon as your product owner goes, I want to release now, you can press the release button and the code that has been written will go straight to live. So we put the release schedule in the hands of the business, the product owners, rather than in the hands of IT. We get away from the, can we have a release? Yes, I'll just merge all my branches, solve all my conflicts, fix all my bugs. It'll be a month. So that's continuous delivery, always being ready to deploy. Continuous deployment then takes that one step further. The code is automatically promoted all the way to production, basically. So we don't even wait for the business to say go, we just push, 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 push. I think realistically, that isn't a target state that many organizations would aim for, because I guess it's diminishing returns in terms of the effort required versus what you gain. This is more, you know, where you've got the Facebooks and the Spotifys of the world, then it's great and works for them. For a commercial bank, not so much. Okay, so that's the CD. So I think first of all, when we talk about this, when people go CI/CD, make it clear which CD we're talking about. The next one, and this really gets abused, is continuous integration. And key to these all is the word continuous. If you are doing any of these things once a week, that's not continuous, that's weekly. Okay, so continuous integration is committing to a shared trunk or master branch at least daily, ideally more. Each commit kicks off your automated build and tests. And when the build fails, it gets back to green within 10 minutes. So those aren't my definitions. Those are the definitions of a man you've probably heard of called Jez Humble, who literally wrote the book, Continuous Integration and Continuous Delivery. So he will give talks, and anytime you go to Jez Humble talk, he will say to the audience, put your hand up if you're doing continuous integration, and everyone will put their hands up, and then he will go through those things. Okay, is your build fixed within 10 minutes? Are you committing at least daily? And gradually all the hands in the audience will go down, and there's a few pockets of people in the corners who are doing the right thing. At that point, Jez will go, right, there you go, everyone. That's what you've got to get on with. The other corollary, so for continuous integration, there are some other rules around it, such as build your binaries once. Okay, if you are rebuilding per environment, then you might as well not have the test environment. You might as well just push it straight to live because you're not testing the same thing. Use precisely the same mechanism to deploy to every environment. So again, our continuous delivery pipeline isn't just testing the software, it's testing our deployment of the software. So if you do it differently to different environments, then again, it's something you haven't tested. And finally, if anything fails, stop the line and go back to the start. Don't fix things, don't fiddle with things, don't change it on pre-production just before you push it live. You go right back to your source control, change the code, and build your binaries again. To achieve all of these beautiful, perfect things, the only, and I'm going to quote from the book actually rather than me, trunk-based development is an effective way of developing and the only one which enables you to perform continuous integration. So this is normally where the pitchforks and the fiery brands will come out and the conversations will happen. But essentially by trunk-based development, what we mean is all developers for a particular deployable unit that is your pipeline commit to one shared branch on source control, usually called trunk. Okay, we don't branch away for weeks or months on end. Everyone works in the same thing because everyone hates merges, unless you're the first one in, of course. So you can remove that pain by doing it little and often. Okay, so there are my definitions out the way. I guess some of the whys of why you do that for me. So obviously, to achieve all that, you need massive levels of automation. So for continuous deployment, where everything is deployed all the way through, you need, that's where all that effort goes into. And that obviously removes the chance of human error. I mean, as we all know, humans are terrible at acting like machines, whereas machines are really good at it. By working in small batches and releasing it often, your code is in live. It's not sitting around gathering dust and turning into potential technical debt. It's in live. You can start to see how it performs. You can do nice things like A/B testing. Smaller changes also mean it's easier to work out what the heck went wrong. So if I save a month's worth of changes up and release my deployment of 300 things and something's not working, I've got 300 things to dig through. If it's just the one thing that I've been working on this morning and it's failed, I know exactly what's gone wrong and where it is and can either fix it quickly or revert it back. And all of that adds up to saved money, basically. So we talk about, I've been talking to clients recently about defining the return on investment for some of these things. And it's super hard to do because actually most of your return on investment is around not wasting time, not wasting money by people having to write a deployment plan, by filtering through all those 300 things to work out what's gone wrong. So, and also to work out from a business perspective, if the thing I've been working on is going to be used. So it really drives people into that MVP behavior where you release the minimum viable service that could be usable and find out whether people are going to use it or not quickly, rather than waiting for 6 months worth of development and going, ta-da! And everyone goes, that is a beautifully engineered thing that we do not want. So there you go. That's my definitions and my reasons, and what I would definitely always advise clients to aim for. So I think in terms of, as I say, continuous deployment, probably not for everyone. I would argue there are very, very few cases where continuous integration and continuous delivery should not be the target state. And I've seen it done in all sorts of places. I've seen it done in obviously the funky kind of startups, but I've also seen it done in huge corporations, in local government, with massive databases. You know, it's harder and easier depending on the scenario, but it absolutely can be done, and it always pays dividends.
Agree. Thank you very much, Bill. Appreciate that. And Tim, from a product point of view, does that resonate with you also?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can kind of expand a little bit from what Ian was saying. Again, coming from a sort of more purist background initially to start with, I kind of trunk-based development. Let's go with that first. I've always been a fan of it for exactly the reasons Ian's laid out. These days, when you suggest let's just everyone throw everything in trunk and we'll be good, people look at you like you're mad half the time. People have got very used to things like, you know, branch development, Git flow, all that sort of stuff, and I see problems with that, and I've seen problems with that throughout my career. And it all comes down to that: can we release this thing now? And why are we releasing, you know, 300 odd changes when it goes wrong? And it will go wrong because, you know, deployments are big and scary, right? They're a big thing. You've got lots of changes. It might not work. You don't do it very often. Trunk-based development, when I first started coding, I was just like, it's like, well, wow, we've actually got a repository for code. This is brilliant. Everyone just commits in there. I was like, oh, we can check that out and work on it on a different machine. Amazing. And then, you know, we kind of went through this, well, what happens when more people are doing and you get conflicts? And I think this was it kind of exacerbated a kind of sort of nascent scene, I guess, in development as we were sort of moving through into the sort of the internet age. This is aging me horribly, I realise, but as the internet became a bigger and bigger thing, you know, releases could be, in theory, you know, we were working on smaller bits of a bigger thing, and everything became more modular. And with web development, especially, and web apps, and, you know, stuff that's delivered via the network over the internet, you can easily break things apart. Now, I don't want to go into microservices because it's an entirely different sort of kind of scenario and a different talk and a different panel, and there's lots of pros and cons of doing that. But if you do go down a microservices sort of approach, which is kind of where we're trying to go in DAZN, with some success and some challenges along the way, being able to release things at different paces is great. And again, if we did trunk, and we don't do trunk-based development, everyone, when I suggest it, people look at me like I'm completely bonkers. But from a purist point of view, Ian's absolutely right. If everyone is committing to trunk, your trunk is absolutely the thing that is the latest thing. And you can, at any point, when someone comes to you and says, can we release now? You will look at trunk and go, yes, or no, because the build's broken and we need to fix it. That probably works with small startups and small team devs. As soon as you get bigger, it does. Actually, there are issues that crops up. So from a product point of view, getting to where we're at DAZN. So DAZN itself is a big business now. It's grown from a small thing to a big thing over a short period of time, like 5 years really, which is a small amount of time to go from two people having a conversation in a pub to, you know, about to launch globally. You know, that quite rapid, 5 or 6 years, I think the timeline is. We've got things where we will do CD, which is continuous delivery, which is, for example, when we've got a client update that we need to push out to Xbox or PlayStation, these things go through a whole approval process. So we can't just go, here you go, Sony, here you go, Sony, here you go, Sony. But we're building up a build that we can run on the dev kit that we've got and go, yeah, it's good, yeah, good, yeah, good. And at some point, someone will go, let's go gold, if you want to use the gaming term for it all, and we can then ship that off for Sony or Microsoft or Apple or Google or whoever, to sort of make sure we've not put in any nefarious backdoors, or there's some major bugs or with the latest firmware or whatever it is. So that comes back to the CICD bit, that continuous integration, and with that constant number of, constant commits to your code repositories, and making sure that your trunk is updating regularly. And that is super, super important. And I think, it goes back to what Ian was saying, is like, if you're not doing that, if you are not regularly merging stuff back into your trunk or master branch or whatever you call it, you will be storing up problems, and they will, absolutely will, come and bite you. And if you haven't, I say that with relative authority, having been a coder for far too many years. And this kind of comes around then to the sort of the thing where, okay, that's constant, continual delivery. In Leeds, we have started doing, and some of our teams are doing, continual deployment, where when code is merged into our master branch, it will go to production, assuming all the pipeline passes, all the tests are there. And we can do that because we are building and microservice-based stuff where everything is very loosely coupled. So if our little bit falls over, it's not the end of the world, because everything else should be able to sort of go, oh, Tim's stuff's down again. Oh well, that's fine. We expect it to be down because they're doing continual deployment, small changes. Occasionally it goes wrong. That's fine. Actually, in the real world, little services fall over from time to time. AWS, exploded in Frankfurt, let's say. That would probably take a few services out for a little while. Sorry, my mind's gone blank. Netflix, that's them. They are well known for just taking out entire regions of their infrastructure in production just to prove that their platform's stable, which is brave. And I wouldn't necessarily advocate most people do that, but it proves that their engineering is strong. And if you do that, you can start doing continual deployment. And as Ian says, this is not for everyone. It won't work in a lot of cases, especially if you are creating, binaries that you have to, for example, send out to clients, or you're building and you need it to be checked by a third party, it has to go through accreditation, whatever it is, or you're dealing with important things like, we're building some tools that help, the video platform distribute live sports. We're not building life support software, that runs life support machines for the NHS. So we can afford to be a little less risk averse. The beauty about continual deployment is you've got your pipelines, you're building, you're committing to it regularly, and it's merging regularly. We're doing this 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times a day sometimes. When that hits our master branch on some of our projects, it goes straight to production. To do that, we have to make sure our tests are good. Testing is so important. Automation testing, just make sure that everything you do is tested, and your tests, as that team responsible for that code, you have to be confident that your tests are good, because you're going, I'm happy to do this because my tests are good. I've got confidence in them. They'll pick up any weirdness 99 times out of 100. That 1% of the times when it goes through and goes wrong, all the pipeline clogs up, pipeline goes red, first thing you do, fix pipeline. Exactly. Going back to the CI principle there, fix pipeline, because someone else who's about to commit something can't do it because the pipeline's broken. So you fix that. That's, drop things, make that work. But as you do this, and it sounds like, well, blimey, this is a bit gung-ho. What's going on here? But if you think about it, we're releasing tiny improvements all the time. So we're releasing all the time. And releases stop becoming a big, scary thing. They stop becoming this massive, like, oh God, what might go wrong now? I'm really worried, and I've not done this in a week, or I've not done this in a month, or, you know, in a previous place where I was, we did releases every 9 months. It's like there's 9 months of code backed up, and it's like the week leading up to that was fun in a weird kind of sadistic way, but it was like, you know, you got to the end of that week and you kind of went, this is the release, it's done. It was just like, it was, oh God, it was awful in a lot of ways. So CI and CD, when the D here, we are saying deployment, what you're doing is you're saying, I'm confident that I can deploy lots of little things constantly. So when things go wrong, the blast radius of it going wrong is tiny. And it's you just go, oh, it's that thing I just committed. Oops, what have I done? You know exactly where the problem is. You can fix it quickly. In theory, this, again, there are cases when this isn't necessarily the case because something slightly external to you goes wrong, but it does, it increases your confidence in being able to fix stuff quickly, and it reduces one of the big metrics that we've kind of straying a bit to DevOps talks now, but everyone talks about mean time to recovery, right, as the most important, one of the most important stats or metrics that you should measure. I would argue that I think more important than mean time to recovery is the mean time to discovery. Actually, the time, most of your MTTR is actually understanding there's a problem. And when you're working in a large organization on a large global platform, actually one of the hardest things is knowing when something's gone wrong, because your code's sat behind a whole bunch of different services which have got their own caches. You've got a CDN in front of it which is caching for like 6 hours, 8 hours at times, because it doesn't change that often, and sometimes it's hide stuff. So if you are doing small releases and you know something goes wrong and you get your monitoring right, it's easy to get the monitoring on small services. You can measure changes more easily, I would argue. You get that mean time to recovery down because your mean time to discovering a problem is down. And again, this bleeds into the 300 changes, long time to discover what bit of code it was that went wrong. Small change is probably in this block here. You know, it's a function we changed, it's gone prod, it's gone wrong. Yeah, this function's gone wrong. Let's fix that. We can, you know, in some cases, fix forward. You don't even need to roll back. Just fix forward. If you've got a good sort of design and architecture on your distributed microservices system, which is what we're talking about here with DAZN, no one actually out there knows about it. They don't know that your pipeline's been read and you fixed it, and it's been read 8 times today because we've changed the way we're doing something. No one knows other than the team, and the team are on top of it, and they've got good alerting, good monitoring. That's how you make deployments not scary. Most people, and this is kind of my main point, I think, is people see deployments as a scary thing and are scared of them. And I've been that soldier. I've been there when it's like, we need to release this thing, and it's like, oh, I don't want to. What if it goes wrong? I don't want to be up all night fixing it. Yeah, get away from that. Make things small. Do small things a lot. Make releasing it such a routine thing, you don't even think about it. It's like, I can release, we release 20 times a day, so let's just do a release, it's fine. Just a normal thing I do every day. Releases then become not a problem, they're not scary, they're not big, they're manageable. And not, you know, not only you, your business is getting used to going, oh yeah, it's changed this, changed this. And you know, this is the sort of stuff that Facebook do and Netflix do and Spotify do, and they can do that because they're big distributed cloud-based sort of software platforms, and you can change little bits and stuff. So from our, you know, our point of view, we can move towards doing continual deployment, and we're not doing this across the board in DAZN by any stretch, but we are doing it at DAZN in Leeds for some teams, and we're looking at expanding that. I guess I kind of echoing Ian's point, I'll leave my rambling on the point where I kind of got a golden rule that I've kind of sort of preach at my guys from time to time, and they look at me like I'm a bit mad. But it's like, is master what you've got in production? If the answer is no, you've got potential problems. If master is the same as prod, you're spot on, you're golden, because you know exactly what you got in production because it's right there in your trunk or your master branch, and that just will save you so much time and effort and loads of energy when something inevitably goes wrong, because we don't live in a perfect world and it will. So make it easier for yourselves when it does. I think with that grenade, I will hand over to Russell.
Thank you. Very, very much a different scale at our end of things as an agency. So I would say 90 to 95% of our development work is pre-production. So we're building code from scratch. And we've definitely been on a journey from a few years ago, say 4 years ago, 1 to 2 developers on a team, and going live meant a few of the senior devs huddling around a MacBook, trying to work out which buttons to tick on AWS to work out how to get a live production environment, and accidentally clicking global replication of various bits to double or triple the costs for the client and things like that. We've come a long way from that. And when I hired a DevOps team, the first thing that we got involved with was pipelines and actually doing some proper automation of engineering, scripting infrastructure as code, with CloudFormation, that kind of thing. And certainly for us, we use a lot of integration, but we're all still 90-95% pre-production. So we're a lot slower pace. So Ian probably wouldn't call it CI by his definition, because we're not a couple of times daily doing that integration. Working on a 10-day sprint, it's probably once every couple of days we'd start to chuck things into various branches. But we love it. We love our pipelines. It takes out the issues that we've got, and exactly as Tim said, you are finding out very quickly if things have failed. So we'll run linting, we'll run things like SonarQube to sniff out issues, we'll run things like unit tests. We're starting to get heavily into test automation using Appium and Cypress and things like that, test across different browser stacks, and we're starting to build in either into the pipelines or to run it on a daily basis, that kind of thing, just to prevent regression. And you're absolutely right, when that pipeline goes to red, we need to jump on it, but because we're pre-production, there's a bit less pressure, and you're in a small team, we're not in a big global large company delivering a big live product to clients. So we've got that opportunity to fix it. But yeah, the emphasis is definitely you've got to fix it before anyone else can make a commit and that kind of thing. Nowadays, bigger teams. So our big Scrum teams are around 15, 16 people, maybe 8 or 9 developers maximum. Still pre-production mostly, but the same principles apply. Get your pipelines working, get your commits to do all of these various stages, make sure it's automated, make sure it's replicatable, so that you're not huddling around a machine working out what to do when it does come. In terms of CD, because we're mostly pre-production, we don't deliver or deploy in that to live in an automated way. What we would typically do is we typically have 4 environments we work with: Dev, QA, UAT, and Live. So when we do a delivery CD kind of thing, we would deliver to a QA team that would be able to pick up the latest build and work through the various features that have been added that sprint and do a bit of manual testing, maybe add some additional automated tests if they need to capture some of the more latest stuff. So that would be how our delivery would work. We'd also have a delivery option to deliver to a client on their UAT platform. So the client would get the latest little iOS, little pop-up on TestFlight or whatever, or Microsoft App Center that says, there's a new build of your app for you to play with. And again, it triggers them into their manual testing process as well. We do have the capability to deploy to live, but it doesn't happen very often just because of the nature of the work that we're doing. Post going live, we do support and maintenance, continuous development, but it's at a very much smaller scale. People may come back and say, can you, once a month, can you add this small feature? So the pace of an agency compared to a product company is very different in terms of rapidly doing lots of micro changes, as it were. Our entire change would be a micro change rather than lots of micro changes. It'd be a single one for a client post live. So we're very much at a different scale. So that is the reality of working in that agency. You absolutely need it. There are a few fundamentals that you need when you're working in a software company, and I give careers lectures at unis and say the fundamental skill that a software engineer needs, a computer scientist needs, is to know how to use Git. They don't teach it in universities. You do single person projects, but when you get into industry, everybody assumes you can use Git. So make sure you do it. There's a few fundamentals you need. Even on smaller projects, you need to have your pipelines to test, to automate, to replicate, to have things done in a consistent way, just to avoid us, the humans, that make mistakes. You need to be able to repeat that. That if someone's off sick, somebody else needs to be able to do it. So that's what, that even in a smaller scale to the big company guys, you still need to be able to do these kind of operations and procedures.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think I can't remember who told me this, but it was just a really simple statement. Like, if you do something manually more than twice, automate it.
It's worth automating, absolutely.
Yeah. I think.
Do you know the other big benefit? You just reminded me, actually. So again, you hear a lot, oh yeah, we couldn't do it our organization. And often that's big regulated places who've got a lot of perceived red tape to answer. But actually, I think CICD makes things so completely auditable that it actually, you know, goes a long way to addressing most of the requirements that a lot of the regulators will put upon you that you just wouldn't by, oh, we filled in a form to say this release can go. Whereas actually, you know exactly what was changed, who pressed the button, who wrote the code. So from that perspective, from any kind of regulation, it's an absolute godsend.
All the validation steps it went through before it ever got to live, yeah. Absolutely.
Yes. So again, even if stuff does go out there that has adversely affected someone, you're going, well, we've put best endeavors around it, and here's the proof. I've got a question. Why do you think guys who have been close to development than I have over the last few years, there is such a visceral reaction to suggesting something like trunk-based development?
That's a really good question.
I have my theories.
I think a lot of it's, I'm going to use the word habitual. I'm not sure that's 100% accurate, but I think it's that sort of thing. It's what you used to doing, and that there's this, I guess there's this concept of, I'm working on my bit, and I don't want, whilst it's in dev, in like I'm working on my bit of feature or whatever. It's like, you know, I want my bit. I want to be sure it's good before I put it into, you know, for other people to see and make sure it's, you know, what they want is, etc. There's a little bit of that. It's mine. I don't want everyone to see it till it's done. And also, if you're working on a relatively big feature, you know, and there's ways you can get around this. But if you're working on a biggish feature, it's hard to commit in Trunk because you'll end up like an open source project where you've just got the nightly build is probably broken 80% of the time because people are just committing their code constantly, and it's like half the time it's in an unfinished state. So I think people get scared by that. Whereas what you kind of want to do is like, well, keep in mind that rule where you're saying, well, just small things that can be released. Just keep, if you keep that whole mantra of like, when I put stuff in there, it wants to be releasable, you kind of can isolate how you write stuff, I suppose. I mean, none of it is this magic bullet that solves all problems. There's always pros and cons to these approaches, you know.
And it's not always easy. I think,
No.
you know, it's easy to say do trunk-based development. To actually do it is tricky.
Yeah.
You're saying it's a discipline.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
my theory also is it's down to a lot of trust, because you are effectively showing other people in your team your code before before it might be, in quote, finished, polished, looking beautiful and shiny. And so, you know, you need a reasonably high trust environment for everyone to be doing that, looking at each other's code all the time. Things like pair programming, you know, really help with this. So if you have to stop and do code reviews to get stuff merged into your main branch, that's going to slow you down. So, you know, those XP approaches really help, but do require super high trust. And, you know, getting the teams to the point where they, you know, they're working like that and do have that sort of that level of trust in each other can take a while, especially when you get places where they move people in and out of teams a lot. That's another anti-pattern.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's like I suppose we're kind of operating on, it's not trunk-based development at all, but you know, it's not mandated anywhere, but we're trying to say, look, a branch shouldn't be living more than 2 weeks. If it's living more than 2 weeks, it's like, you know, jokingly, I say, don't make me write a rule that deletes branches that are older than 2 weeks, because I will. I won't, because I'm not that evil, but I could do, and someone who's more evil than me might. It's like,
I definitely would.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's because you are evil. But if you can get that, again, I think it's a kind of mindset shift, isn't it? It's like, have this idea that you want to make small releases constantly, and if you do that, then trunk-based development becomes far more achievable. Whereas if you're writing, you know, 50 new features for multiple local authorities around the country, and you need to get them all done for your next release, that does take 6 to 9 months, and then a horrible release process. So it's you know, I think it's a cultural thing, as well as I think people are now used to doing, well, I'll work on my branch, I'm happy, and then you go through merge hell. But you know, that, do you like merge hell is the question I'd ask people. Do you like it? If you do, crack on. I hated it. It was the worst thing. So like, it made me go, I'm committed to trunk, I'm committed to trunk, I'm committed to trunk, because my changes are small. So my merge problems, if there were any, were small. And then my stuff's in trunk, so I'm happy. If anyone's sat on code for 5 weeks, they then have to deal with all my multiple changes in one go. It becomes a bit competitive in that sense, but you know, it's again, you are, as a team or as an individual in a team, but in a team in a larger organization, if you're making small changes often, then you've got that confidence that it's good, rather than, oh my goodness, I'm sat on 9 months of dev here, any bit of it which might now be wrong, because 9 months ago the larger, wider situation was different to it as it is now, especially in a fast-paced business. It's but yeah, I guess, I don't know, it's just habit maybe, or people are scared, or again, it's that fear of releasing, when releases shouldn't be scary.
No. I'll use that example that an old colleague of mine once said, you know, if you were going to play at Wimbledon, you wouldn't just rock up once a year with your racket in hand and assume you'd do well. You'd practice often and lots. So by that point, by the time you get to go to Wimbledon, you're fairly well practiced, and, you know, still going to get beaten by Nadal and Djokovic, but hey, better chance.
Yeah, exactly.
And just while we're on the chat about the trunk-based development, Simon's asked a question here. How can you fit exploratory testing by QAs when using trunk-based development in conjunction with continuous deployment?
Awesome question.
I know it's you guys.
It is a good question.
So,
yeah, go on, Ian, you go first.
Well, I was going to say, the approach I have seen work is that the tester who is doing the exploratory testing is effectively able to spin up an environment to do that in, as and when they wish to do it. So you don't stop everything else and go, right, I'm going to do some exploratory testing this afternoon, release nothing again, because all that's doing is backing up your changes. So yeah, in the same way as, you know, the code base is always changing in live, in source control, there isn't a good time to draw the line and stop. So don't spin yourself off an environment, do the exploratory testing, find the problems. That would always be my approach. And I have seen that work, but does require you to have good deal of automation around your platforms. So infrastructure as code, configuration as code, source control, all the things.
Yeah.
As a
meme
for that.
That makes it easy easier if you've got the luxury of that, which we do. So I'm just going to I'm guessing, and I apologies if I get this wrong, Simon, but I'm guessing that your QA team are separate to your development team, and that is, in my opinion, bad. It's a bad thing. That I realise this is quite a controversial statement.
Doesn't necessarily follow that just because you have. I still think you have testers doing exploratory testing more than developers, because you get blind to your own code, don't you? And I think people who have that testing hat in the team are better at coming in at oblique angles.
Yes, but I would have, and this is what we do at DAZN, is we have software developers in test, or software engineers in test, embedded in each team. So each team has their own tester who is responsible for making sure the team is got good quality. Now, quality in software is the team's responsibility. It's not the QA's. Then it shouldn't be on the QA. The worst thing I see this a lot. I've seen it in loads of places. You know, dev test. You know, I've written my unit test, brilliant. Over the wall it goes. The ticket's over the wall to QA, and QA then look, oh, what's this? What this? Have you even looked at the acceptance criteria? What this doesn't do this thing? I was like, oh, it goes back, and then it's move that left on your board. Get rid of QA or test or whatever it is over here. Get rid of it. Throw it away. Move the entire test effort as far left as you can. Like, ideally, I'm going again, assumption here that you're working in Scrum or Kanban or something, similar. Like, when your tickets are getting written, do your QA effort there. Like, what if? What happens
EDD.
when? Yeah. Do that. That will save you loads of work. Now, yeah, I mean, there is still 100% room for exploratory testing, and you should still be doing that. And I'd say your QA in your team, your tester in your team, should be at least part of that whole thing. You might actually have a separate focus UAT team actually as well, that does a more sort of holistic overall view. And again, spin up an environment to check them, do it all the time. But get your QAs or your testers in with your devs, have them there all together working on the same stuff, pairing on tickets, understanding, hey, Tim, have you thought about what happens if, someone puts in a negative number here or a string or something? And I'm going, well, no, why would they do that? It says, how many goals are Liverpool going to score this weekend? Why would it be nice? I'm just tunnel vision. Your tester's got that testing sort of out mindset on, and they're going, well, what about? If you get them in with the devs and you're pairing, then you're thinking about it early, and you can write that stuff around it. You can write the tests that your automation pipeline checks for stuff like that. So again, it comes back to my point of, if your pipeline's good and you've got really good confidence that what you're sending through is going to be good, then it kind of reduces a bit your need for as heavy sort of manual testing on the other end. Now, I will caveat that by saying I know automation testing on front end stuff and web browser is far more tricky than doing it on back end API stuff, and you have to kind of bear that in mind. And there's some stuff that is very difficult to automate, and you need a human to do it. So don't throw that away, but try and get as much of it done before you even write code. As far left as you can would be my suggestion. And again, that's a cultural change, and you're not going to be able to click your fingers and make it happen overnight. You have to kind of keep convincing people it's the right way to do it and show them the benefits.
100% agree. QA isn't a waterfall process. Get it? QA should be checking designs, like you said, their experience. What about this case? What about this case? What happens here? Pairing with the developers, saying, oh, let me have that build halfway done. Just give me that little build to play with, and you carry on and things like that. Absolutely. Don't throw it over the wall.
Yeah. So I think it's obviously the question was around exploratory testing, which is a tester prodding your product. So I think, yeah, it's difficult to do if you haven't got the capability to spin up an environment to do it in outside of your standard route to live. I think it's probably the answer there. So if you are working on long living tin servers, it's tricky, and you get less and less value, I think, because obviously those servers aren't as immutable as your infrastructure as code ones, and will start to drift away. So
I mean, we're also looking at, once a month, say, in all our SDETs in our teams together as a sort of guild or, cross-cutting chapter, whatever you want to call them, it doesn't really matter. Together, and they just go, all right, which bit of our product are we going to poke today? And just having half a day or a day of just going, right, let's see what we can break. And you kind of then using that exploratory testing as a sort of, kind of, is stuff still good? Is it still good? I remember building this a year ago. Oh, the acceptance criteria is still accurate. Is it still doing what we expect it to do? Are users complaining of problems? So again, banging on about automation all the time, but you can help with a lot of this stuff, especially in kind of this cloud-based software stuff that we're doing. Is like, are our metrics that we're measuring against for success, are they still being met a year later? Are we still delivering stuff in under a second, or is this service returning its response in 100 milliseconds or less, 90% of the time, yes or no? It's stuff like that that helps you take the burden off exploratory testing. Now, exploratory testing absolutely 100% has a place, because there's some stuff that humans can do that machines just will never, well, not for a long time, I don't expect to be able to do. So absolutely do it. Don't make it the be all and end all. Make it easy on your exploratory testers. Catch as much as you can as early as you can.
Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate that. I also had another question from Leanne. She wanted to touch upon automated security testing. So she's joined an organisation which is very much in its early days. It wants DevOps, but it's very much in its early days. So she's come from a development background into a security role. So she's struggling to get that buy-in for the automated security testing. So what's the strength behind having this? And I think it really gives her something to potentially take away, which is the main benefit of this. So which one is happy to answer that one?
I mean, I don't mind, because I've done pen testing before in my many varied guises and hats. Yeah, this is a tough one. I won't lie. Pen testing's difficult. It is by its nature exploratory in a lot of cases. I mean, you can probably automate things like your kind of standard fuzzing and sort of parameter injection and overflow style attacks relatively easily. Maybe you can use something like I've used Burp Suite in the past. Security is always one of these things that companies on the whole, in my experience, kind of leave as a sort of separate concern, and that's like someone else's problem. And I'm just sort of reading your question, Leanne, and just underneath it's kind of getting the buy-in. That it's difficult, right?
I'm wondering where the pushback's coming from, whether it's a time question or a money question that people aren't wanting to buy into. There are ways of addressing it. So I'm guessing from an automated security testing, I assume you're meaning as part of the deployment pipeline, you'd like to have some static code analysis sort of stuff in there, check for, standard SQL injection stuff, the stuff you can automate nicely as part of your deployment. So there'll be two things for that. One will be, we need some money to buy a tool that does the thing. And then we need the time and buy-in from the development teams to implement it, as a part of their pipeline. And I think this probably does speak to the bit of the siloed nature still around security. So we've done a lot of work, obviously fighting dev and ops should be working together. We've talked already about, testing isn't a phase. It's fundamental to what we do. Security is probably one of the last sort of holdouts, I think, in not being part of that. And, you know, I've seen the phrase DevSec test stops trying to describe everything in there and has security in it, which is great. And I think a lot of security, this, you know, I think seeing a developer who's gone into security is flipping brilliant, because that's what we need more of. I think you know, I've seen actually the problem often is the security team themselves who don't see it as their job to get down and dirty, sit with the developers, help them understand what secure coding looks like, help them understand why knowing what the OWASP top 10 is important to them, because their software is going to be running in live, and as soon as it's running in live, it will be poked and prodded. You can do a great test by spinning yourself up a server in any cloud provider without any kind of firewalls in front of it, and then just watch the logs. As soon as it exists, it is being probed. It is terrifying. I mean, that for instance, Dan, might actually be a useful thing. It's like, okay, let's get something we know is unsecure, stick it out there, let me show you what happens. It does come down a little bit to the risk appetite of the company and the product you're creating. So there are different levels of it. Obviously, if you're under FCA regulations, you literally have to include security as part of what you do, or they'll shut you down. If you're just producing an app, I guess, that's pulling together a bunch of web components and Google Maps and things, what's the worst that can happen if someone does get in? Maybe there's an argument, but equally, what's the worst that someone gets into your own network? Mostly a time thing. Okay, so it's the time and effort. So yeah, show them what could go wrong, I think, is probably the answer.
I think
also, sorry, Tim, come on.
No.
I was just going to say, there's probably if you're doing the testing anyway, there has to be a really clear ROI on this is going to save me, you know, even just a few hours a day saved. You multiply that up, that adds up very quickly to pay for the tooling, and extra security people. Usually, it's a really large number.
Yeah, I mean, the way we're kind of trying to tackle it, and I'd say we're definitely not there yet, but we have this concept of security champions, where in an ideal world, each dev team will have someone who is the designated security champion, and they go and sit with the security team and they talk about the thing, and we run things like threat modeling sessions on, you know, we'll pick a part of the platform and go, right, what can we do with this? And actually having that kind of designated go-to person in each team, if you spin it right, and you have to sell this, to be fair, because security is one of the dullest, most driest topics you can talk about in IT.
Dude, Leanne is listening to this.
I know, and I massively applaud.
Sorry, Leanne.
People don't take it seriously enough, because they just, every kind of white paper that you see on internet security is just reams and reams of text, and like no one's got time to read that. So having done the security thing myself, so you know, I feel the pain. Get someone who's invested in wanting to make it good, and like Ian said, show them what happens when it goes wrong and what the damage could be. And again, you can, to quite a decent level, I think, cover the basics just by having someone who's, especially if you're using extreme programming, you're pairing a lot. It's just like, just do a code review every couple of weeks, month, whatever is suitable for you. Go through just with the security head on, go, oh, have we checked that we're not doing this? Or do we really need this port open now? You know, should this port be open? We were pinging some test data in on that port in QA, but maybe we should be shutting that down in prod. Let's automate that to make sure that happens. Those sort of questions, again, it's like that. Get that hat on, get that security hat on, and think, right, I'm security now. I'm not the dev anymore. I'm the security guy, and I'm thinking, how am I going to break this in a nefarious manner? You know, and you don't actually need, you know, years and years and years of training for this, but a general idea of what the OWASP top 10 are is a great starting point. You go, oh, blimey, I hadn't thought about that. Who on earth is going to do some deserialized attack on my Java classes? But I've seen it happen. And it's like it's horrible, and it can do massive damage to your reputation as a company, and potentially your customers. So yeah, it's a tough one, right?
I'm going to paste the link into the chat for Leanne, which is a fantastic visualization of the world's biggest data breaches and hacks. So yeah, have a look at that, and you can see all the companies with data breaches, I think, that caused losses, and you can see how much they lost, how it happened. So that might be useful. I don't know.
Yeah, I think running hack days is another good thing to do, and running like capture the flag events, and that gets people going, oh, how do I hack this? And it turns that I don't want to read through a 200-page white paper. I want to know how can I hack into my site, or this kind of sandbox environment. That's great fun. Yeah, fair point.
She passed the test.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Offer her a job, yeah.
Yeah.
So what Leanne's took from this is a security breach and a change of career after Tim's comments. So,
yeah, no.
But some really, really great points there, guys. I'm sure, obviously, Leanne can take a lot away from that. It looks like we're out of questions, and we're obviously coming to the end of the event. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who's tuned in. This event will be on our YouTube channel, so please give us a subscribe, and any past events and podcasts will be on there. And give us a follow on Instagram also, just for upcoming events. But I really want to thank Russell, Ian, Tim. I think everyone's going to take a lot away from this, even if from a purist product or even agency point of view. I think they're going to learn a lot from what we've discussed today, and hope to see you all in the next one. So thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Cheers. Yeah, thanks.